"You're a burden, Dad. Get out!" Oh, shouted my greedy daughter, waving a winning lottery ticket worth 30 million. Her husband laughed as he kicked me out of the house I had bought with my own money. I just smiled. "Daughter, are you sure you read the name on that ticket?" When they looked closer, they started screaming and tearing their hair out. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The bills hit the coffee table like accusations. Teresa's hand slammed down beside them, sending the electric bill sliding toward my worn armchair. "Look at this mess!" Her voice cut through the afternoon silence. "300 for electricity, 250 for gas, and that's not even counting groceries." Neil shifted on the couch without looking away from the television. Some talk show droned in the background, audience laughter punctuating our family drama. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Your pathetic 1,200 isn't even enough for groceries?" Teresa spun toward me, her face flushed with anger. "We're drowning here, Dad, and you just sit there like everything's fine." I folded my hands in my lap, watching her pace between the kitchen entrance and the coffee table. 3 years of this. 3 years since I'd given them everything. "The pension covers what it covers," I said quietly. "Maybe one of you could finally find a job." The words hung in the air like smoke. Neil's head snapped toward me, his eyes narrowing. The talk show host's voice filled the sudden silence. "Are you saying I'm a failure?" Neil's voice carried that dangerous edge I'd learned to recognize. He pushed himself up on the couch, no longer lounging. "I've been looking for work. The market's terrible for sales managers." "For 2 years?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. Teresa laughed, sharp and bitter. "Right, Neil's the problem. Not the fact that your Social Security is barely enough to keep the lights on." She gestured at the scattered bills. "We need real money, not pocket change from some factory pension." The coffee table between us might as well have been a canyon. These bills, these numbers, they represented more than monthly expenses. They were evidence of broken promises, of sacrifices that had gone unacknowledged. "I worked 37 years at that factory," I said, my voice steady despite the anger building in my chest. "That pension supported your mother and me just fine." "Well, Mom's not here anymore, is she?" Teresa's words hit like a slap. "And your little pension doesn't stretch to cover 3 people." Neil stood up now, his bulk casting a shadow across the coffee table. "Maybe you should have thought about that before moving in with us." His tone suggested I'd forced my way into their home rather than been invited. The television laugh track seemed to mock us all. "I seem to remember being asked to move in," I said carefully, "after I sold my house and helped with your down payment." "That was different." Teresa waved her hand dismissively. "That was 3 years ago. Things change." 3 years? Had it really been that long since I'd handed over the check for $150,000? Since Teresa had hugged me and promised I'd always have a home with them? "Things do change," I agreed, "but I haven't." Neil stepped closer to my chair. "Look, old man, we're grateful for what you did back then, but that doesn't mean we owe you free room and board forever." The words stung more than they should have. Free room and board, as if my pension, my grocery contributions, my help with utilities meant nothing. "I'm not asking for free anything," I said. "I pay my share." "Your share?" Teresa's voice climbed higher. "Your share would be splitting everything 3 ways. Your share would be 800 rent, not the nothing you pay now." The math was deliberately cruel. $800 would leave me with 400 from my pension. 400 to cover food, clothing, medical expenses, everything else an old man needed to survive. "So what are you suggesting?" I asked. Teresa and Neil exchanged a look. In that glance I saw something that chilled me more than the November cold seeping through the windows. They'd discussed this before. This wasn't a spontaneous argument born of financial stress. This was planned. "We're suggesting," Neil said slowly, "that you figure out how to contribute more, or figure out somewhere else to live." The television audience erupted in applause. Someone had just won something, received something wonderful and unexpected. The contrast felt deliberately cruel. I looked at my daughter, searching her face for any trace of the little girl who used to climb into my lap when thunderstorms scared her. The woman staring back at me was a stranger. "I see," I said. But I didn't see. Not yet. I wouldn't see clearly for another few minutes, when Teresa would thrust 5 crumpled dollars into my hand and send me out into the cold. I wouldn't understand the full scope of their ingratitude until I walked through the streets of Elgin, remembering every sacrifice I'd made for them. Right now, I just felt tired and foolish for believing that family meant something more than a monthly expense report. Well, Teresa demanded, what's it going to be? The question hung between us like a sword. Outside, clouds gathered for what looked like the season's first real cold snap. Inside, something equally bitter was settling over our small living room. The silence stretched like a held breath. Teresa stood over me, hands on her hips, waiting for an answer I didn't have. Neil remained by the couch, arms crossed, wearing the expression of a man who'd already won. Finally, Teresa made a sound of disgust. Fine, just fine. She stalked toward the kitchen, then spun back around. But you're not sitting around here all day feeling sorry for yourself. She disappeared for a moment, and I heard the familiar sound of her purse being rifled through. Coins clattered, paper rustled. When she returned, she had a crumpled $5 bill in her fist. Here! She thrust the money toward me like it burned her fingers. Take these $5 and buy a lottery ticket. At least then you'll be some use to this family. The bill hung between us, wrinkled and worn. $5. The price of my usefulness, apparently. Go on, she said when I didn't immediately take it. Maybe you'll get lucky and solve all our problems. Neil chuckled from his position by the couch. Yeah, because that's exactly how lottery tickets work. But Teresa shot him a look that silenced his sarcasm. This wasn't about the lottery ticket, and we all knew it. This was about sending me away, getting me out of the house so they could discuss whatever they'd been planning. I reached out and took the $5. The paper felt soft from handling, worn thin by countless transactions. Someone else had earned this money, spent it, received it as change. Now it was mine, a gift wrapped in humiliation. Thank you, I said. Teresa blinked, as if she'd expected an argument. Well, good. She stepped back, suddenly uncertain. The convenience store on McLean has those scratch-off tickets. Get something decent, not those dollar ones. I folded the bill carefully and slipped it into my shirt pocket. I'll do that. Standing up from my chair took more effort than it should have. My knees protested, stiff from sitting through the argument. How long had we been at this? An hour? 2? The afternoon light coming through the windows had shifted, grown thinner. Where are you going? Neil asked as I moved toward the front closet. To buy a lottery ticket. I pulled my coat from its hanger. The fabric felt heavier than usual, or maybe I felt lighter, hollowed out. Isn't that what was requested? Teresa watched me button the coat. You don't have to make it sound like we're sending you to prison. Of course not. I wound my scarf around my neck, taking my time with each loop. It's a beautiful day for a walk. Through the window, I could see the November sky pressing down like a gray blanket. Beautiful wasn't the word anyone would use, but then again, truth seemed to be in short supply in this house. Dad! Teresa's voice carried a note I couldn't quite identify. Regret? Doubt? We're not... This isn't personal. I paused with my hand on the doorknob. No, I'm sure it's not. It's just practical, Neil added from the living room. We all have to face reality. Reality. Yes, I was beginning to see reality very clearly. The reality of what my $150,000 had bought me. The reality of what family meant when money got tight. I understand, I said, and I did, more than they knew. I opened the front door and November air rushed in to greet me. It carried the smell of dead leaves and coming snow, of seasons changing whether we were ready or not. Get the $5 tickets, Teresa called after me. Those have better odds. Better odds. I almost smiled at that. After today, I was beginning to think I understood odds better than I ever had before. I'll remember that, I said. The door closed behind me with a soft click, cutting off the warmth and the voices in the television that had provided its soundtrack to my humiliation. The porch steps creaked under my feet, and then I was on the sidewalk, breathing free air for the first time in hours. $5 in my pocket. $5 to buy hope, to make myself useful, to solve all our problems. They had no idea how right they might be about that. But first, I needed to walk. I needed to think. I needed to remember exactly how I'd ended up standing on this sidewalk with $5 in my pocket and nowhere to call home. The convenience store on McLean was a 20-minute walk. I had time to remember everything. Time to add up every sacrifice, every broken promise, every kindness that had gone unacknowledged. Time to decide what to do about it. The cold hit my face like a wake-up call. November in Illinois didn't mess around, and today felt like winter's warning shot. I pulled my coat tighter and started walking, leaving Teresa's house behind me. My feet found their rhythm on the sidewalk automatically. Left, right, left, right. The same pace I'd walked to the Ford plant every morning for 37 years. The same measured steps that had carried me through this neighborhood countless times since moving in with my daughter. Moving in. What a phrase, as if I'd had a choice. The houses on Teresa's street looked warm and inviting, yellow light spilling from windows as families settled into their Friday evening routines. Through one window, I glimpsed a father helping a young boy with homework at a kitchen table. Through another, a mother was setting plates for dinner, while her teenage daughter talked on the phone. Normal families. Families that probably didn't calculate the exact dollar value of their elderly relatives. I turned onto McLean Street, walking past the elementary school where Teresa had once attended. The playground equipment looked newer now, brighter colors, safer designs. Everything improved except family loyalty, apparently. The $5 bill crinkled in my pocket as I walked. $5 for hope. $5 for usefulness. The irony wasn't lost on me that this same amount of money had once meant something entirely different to me. When Teresa was 8 and wanted ice cream from the truck, $5 had been a grand gesture. When she was 16 and needed gas money, $5 had been freedom itself. Now it was charity. Worse than charity, it was a dismissal. My breath came out in small clouds as the temperature dropped. The weather matched my mood, gray and getting colder, but the walking felt good. It felt like progress, even if I wasn't sure where I was progressing to. 3 blocks from Teresa's house, I passed the corner where old Mr. Henderson used to live. He'd been gone 2 years now, his house sold to a young couple with twin babies. Henderson had lived alone after his wife died, just like I lived alone now despite being surrounded by family. The memory hit me without warning. 3 years ago, standing in the kitchen of my own house on Elm Street, the house I'd bought in 1983, where I'd raised Teresa, where Margaret and I had planned to grow old together. The house that had been paid off for 15 years when the cancer took Margaret. "Dad, you can't live in that big house all by yourself," Teresa had said, her voice full of concern I'd believed was genuine. "It's not safe. What if you fall? What if something happens?" Neil had nodded along, playing the caring son-in-law. "We've got that extra bedroom. You'd be doing us a favor, really. Help with the mortgage." Help with the mortgage. Even then, it had been about money. The house is worth at least $180, the realtor had told me. Maybe more in this market. Location's perfect. Everything's been maintained. $180,000. 34 years of mortgage payments, maintenance, improvements. 34 years of Margaret's garden, her careful decorating, her dreams made manifest in wallpaper and paint colors. "We'll take good care of you, Dad," Teresa had promised. "You'll always have a home with us." Always. What a word. What a lie. The house had sold for $182,000. After fees and closing costs, I'd walked away with $178,000. I'd kept $28,000 for myself, enough for emergencies, medical bills, maybe a small vacation to see the Grand Canyon like Margaret had always wanted. The rest, $150,000, I'd given to Teresa and Neil, their down payment on the house where I now lived as an unwelcome guest. "This is so generous, Dad," Teresa had cried, actually cried when I'd handed over the check. "We'll never forget this. Never." 3 years. It had taken exactly 3 years for never to become never mind. I reached Lord's Park and paused at the entrance. The pond was starting to skim over with ice, and the geese that usually congregated here had mostly moved on to warmer territories. Smart birds. They knew when it was time to go. $28,000. That's what I had left of my life's work. $28,000 and a $1,200 pension that apparently wasn't enough to buy me basic human decency from my own daughter. But it might be enough for something else, something they weren't expecting. I pulled the $5 bill from my pocket and looked at it in the fading light. Such a small thing to represent such a large insult, but sometimes small things could have big consequences. The convenience store was 2 blocks away. I could see its neon sign flickering in the distance, red and blue against the gray sky. Open 24 hours. Always there when you needed it. I folded the bill carefully and put it back in my pocket. Then I started walking again, my steps more purposeful now. I had a lottery ticket to buy, I had a future to secure, and I had some plans to make. The 7-Eleven's fluorescent lights hit me like a spotlight after the gray afternoon. The bell chimed overhead as I pushed through the glass door, and suddenly I was back in the world of normal people doing normal things. A woman juggled coffee and car keys while her toddler begged for candy. 2 teenagers debated energy drink flavors near the cooler. Nobody here knew about family meetings disguised as financial discussions. Nobody here had just been told to find somewhere else to live. Afternoon, Mr. Peters. Ramesh looked up from behind the counter, his smile genuine. He'd been working here 2 years, maybe 3. Always polite. Always remembered names. Cold one today. Getting colder. I approached the counter where the lottery display sat like a shrine to impossible dreams. Scratch-offs in neat rows. Powerball and Mega Millions tickets waiting to be printed. Powerball for tonight's drawing? Tuesday's the big one, Ramesh corrected gently. 30 million jackpot. You feeling lucky? Lucky. What an interesting word. Was it luck that had brought me to this moment? Was it luck that Teresa had handed me $5 and sent me away like an errand boy? 1 ticket for Teresa Hargrove, I said clearly, and 2 tickets for Orrin Peters. Ramesh's fingers moved across the machine without question, the printer whirred, spitting out 3 slips of paper with their neat rows of numbers. Hope reduced to mathematical probability. Quick pick on all 3? Quick pick. Let the machine choose. Let chance decide what numbers might change everything. I pulled out my wallet, feeling the weight of my decision. Teresa's crumpled $5 bill went on the counter first. Then I added a 10 from my own money, crisp and clean from the bank withdrawal I'd made last week. 15 total, Ramesh said, making change. Good luck to both of you. Both of us, if only he knew. The machine finished printing with a mechanical sigh. 3 tickets, each bearing the drawing date. Tuesday, November 19th, 2024. Each carrying the same impossible odds, the same slim chance of transforming ordinary lives into something extraordinary. I folded the tickets carefully, making sure not to crease the barcodes. Teresa's ticket went into my shirt pocket, close to my heart like a secret promise. My 2 tickets found homes in my wallet, nestled between old photographs and my Medicare card. Weather's supposed to turn nasty this week, Ramesh said, counting out my change. Snow by Thursday, maybe Friday. Good thing I don't have anywhere important to be. The lie came easily. I had the most important place to be on Tuesday night, right in that living room, watching Teresa check those numbers, watching her face when she realized what $30 million meant, watching her plan a future that didn't include the burden of caring for an aging father, a future that would never come. The bell chimed again as I pushed back into the November cold. The afternoon had grown darker while I was inside, streetlights beginning to flicker on even though sunset was still an hour away. November in Illinois didn't believe in long days or gentle transitions. $5 of Teresa's money had bought her 1 chance at 30 million. $10 of my money had bought me 2 chances at something much more valuable. Justice. The walk home would take 20 minutes. 20 minutes to prepare my face, to practice the expression of a man who'd done exactly what he'd been told to do. 20 minutes to become the obedient father again, the grateful dependent who'd used his daughter's charity to buy impossible dreams. I pulled my coat tighter and started walking. Behind me, the 7-Eleven's neon sign buzzed in the growing darkness, advertising hope and instant coffee and cigarettes. All the things people bought when they needed something to change their lives. I had what I needed in my wallet now. Change was coming whether they were ready for it or not. The tickets rustled softly against my chest as I walked. 3 pieces of paper that would reshape everything. 3 chances for the universe to deliver exactly the justice that 37 years of honest work and $150,000 in generosity deserved. Tuesday couldn't come fast enough. The front door yielded to my key with its familiar resistance. 3 years of turning that lock, and it still felt slightly foreign, like I was asking permission to enter someone else's space. The warmth hit my face immediately, along with the sound of the television and the smell of whatever Teresa was planning for dinner. "That you, Dad?" Her voice carried from the kitchen, casual and dismissive. "Just me." I hung my coat in the closet, taking my time with the wooden hanger. The tickets felt warm against my chest. 3 small rectangles of possibility that nobody else knew existed. Neil looked up from the couch when I entered the living room. He'd changed positions since I left, but only barely. Now he was sprawled across the cushions with a bag of chips balanced on his stomach, watching some afternoon talk show. "Get yourself a winner?" He gestured at me with the remote, his tone suggesting the question was more mockery than genuine interest. I reached into my shirt pocket and pulled out the 3 tickets, placing them on the coffee table with practiced casualness. Just a routine transaction, nothing worth examining too closely. "Quick picks," I said. "Drawings Tuesday." Teresa emerged from the kitchen, dish towel in her hands, and glanced at the coffee table. The tickets lay there innocuously, 3 strips of white paper, among the scattered mail and remote controls. "Already planning how to spend your millions?" Her laugh had sharp edges. "Maybe you can buy us a new house, somewhere with better heating." The irony was so perfect it hurt. She had no idea how close to truth her sarcasm landed. Neil grabbed one of the tickets, barely glancing at it before tossing it back. "Powerball, huh? What's the jackpot this week?" 30 million, I said quietly. 30 million. Teresa shook her head, moving toward the window to adjust the curtains. "Just imagine. $30 million and all our problems solved. No more fighting about grocery money. No more worry about heating bills." She pulled the curtains shut against the early darkness. "Of course, knowing our luck, we'll match one number and win free tickets for next week." "That's about right," Neil agreed, turning his attention back to the television. "Peter's family luck runs about as thin as everything else around here." I stood there listening to them discuss my tickets, our tickets, with the casual certainty of people who'd never experienced real luck, good or bad. They saw 3 pieces of paper worth $15 of fleeting hope. They couldn't see the careful planning, the strategic thinking, the justice waiting to unfold. "Well," Teresa said, settling into her chair, "I suppose it's nice to dream for a few days, even if it's just fantasy." Fantasy! The word hung in the air like incense in a church. They had no idea that their fantasy was about to become someone else's reality. "I think I'll rest before dinner," I said. "Sure thing." Teresa waved the dish towel absently. "We're having leftover casserole. Hope that's okay with you." Of course it was okay with me. Everything was okay with me now. I was the grateful dependent, the aging father who accepted whatever scraps of consideration fell his way, the man who'd sold his house and given away his future for the privilege of being tolerated in someone else's home. I climbed the stairs slowly, letting my feet find each step with deliberate care. Behind me, the television droned on, and Neil made some comment about dinner that earned a sharp response from Teresa. Normal family sounds. Normal family tensions. Everything perfectly normal for the last few days before normal ended forever. My room waited at the top of the stairs, small and tidy and temporary. The bed I'd bought with my own money, the dresser that had once sat in the master bedroom of my house on Elm Street. Pieces of my old life arranged in a space barely large enough to contain them. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened my wallet, looking at the 2 tickets nestled between my Medicare card and a photograph of Margaret. Same numbers, same date, same impossible odds as the one downstairs, but these belonged to me. These carried my name in block letters that couldn't be disputed or explained away. Tuesday night, 4 more days of playing the grateful father, the burden who contributed his pension and bought lottery tickets with pocket money. 4 more days of listening to them plan a future that assumed I'd always be there to help pay for it. 4 more days until they learned exactly what Orrin Peters was worth. I put the tickets back in my wallet and closed it carefully. Downstairs, something clattered in the kitchen, and Teresa called out instructions about setting the table. Domestic sounds, family sounds. The soundtrack of people who had no idea their world was about to change. From my window, I could see the 7-Eleven sign in the distance, a small bright spot in the gathering darkness. Ramesh would be starting his evening shift soon, checking inventory and helping customers buy hope for pocket change. Hope. That's what I'd bought today, but not the kind they thought. I'd bought the hope of justice, the hope of consequences, the hope that sacrifice and kindness might finally be rewarded. Tuesday couldn't come soon enough. 4 days passed like water through cupped hands. Saturday and Sunday blended into Monday, ordinary family routines punctuated by ordinary family tensions. The tickets remained on the coffee table, forgotten among bills and magazines, and Neil's empty beer bottles. I maintained my quiet demeanor, reading newspapers and watching afternoon game shows. Occasionally, Teresa would mention the tickets in passing, usually to make some joke about our inevitable losing. Neil ignored them entirely, more focused on job applications he never quite finished filling out. Tuesday evening arrived gray and cold, winter settling its bones into Illinois soil. The lottery show began at 8, sandwiched between news and sitcom reruns. We gathered in the living room without discussion, drawn by habit rather than hope. "Might as well check our loser tickets," Teresa said, reaching for the coffee table. She gathered all 3 tickets, holding them like a losing hand of cards. "What were those numbers again, Dad?" "I don't remember." The lie came easily. I'd memorized every digit 3 days ago, knew them better than my own phone number. "That's what the tickets are for." The television host appeared, bright and enthusiastic, surrounded by numbered balls in a clear plastic sphere. "Good evening and welcome to Tuesday Night Powerball. Tonight's jackpot stands at $30 million. $30 million? Neil straightened slightly on the couch, his attention caught despite himself. $30 million buys a lot of beer," he muttered, trying to sound disinterested. Teresa shushed him, squinting at the first ticket in her hands. "Okay, here we go. Our chance to join the ranks of the newly rich and obnoxious." The sphere spun, balls dancing like excited children. The host reached in with practiced showmanship, drawing the first white ball. 7. Teresa glanced at the ticket. 7? Well, that's one. "Don't get excited yet," Neil said. "It's probably the only one." The second ball emerged from the chaos. 23. 23. Teresa's voice carried a hint of interest now. "We've got 23 too." I sat in my chair, hands folded, watching this performance with the detachment of someone observing a play. The actors didn't know their lines, didn't understand their roles in the drama unfolding. 31? Teresa leaned forward. 31. That's 3. Her voice climbed higher. "Wait, that's actually 3 numbers." Neil turned away from the television, suddenly focused. "Let me see that ticket." 42. 42? Teresa was standing now, ticket shaking in her hands. 4 numbers. We have 4 numbers. The host's voice seemed to echo in the sudden tension. 58. Silence. Teresa stared at the ticket, her lips moving as she checked and double-checked. Neil grabbed her wrist, pulling the ticket closer to his eyes. 58, she whispered. "We have 58. 5 numbers," Neil breathed. 5 out of 6 numbers. "And now," the host announced with practiced drama, "the Powerball. Tonight's Powerball number is 12. The moment stretched like a held breath. Teresa looked at the ticket, looked at the television, looked back at the ticket. Her face went completely white. 12, she said, her voice barely audible. "The Powerball is 12. Neil snatched the ticket from her hands. His eyes moved across the numbers like a man reading his own death sentence, then suddenly blazed with wild excitement. "Oh my! We won! We won!" He jumped up from the couch, the ticket clutched in his fist. $30 million! We're millionaires! Teresa collapsed back into her chair, then immediately bounced up again, as if the furniture couldn't contain her excitement. "I can't believe it. I actually can't believe it. We won the lottery." They turned to each other, embracing with an intensity I hadn't seen since their wedding day. Neil spun Teresa around the coffee table, while she laughed and cried simultaneously. $30 million, she kept repeating. $30 million. "We can quit worrying about money forever," Neil said, his voice thick with emotion. "New house, new cars, travel anywhere we want. We can pay off everything. We can buy everything. We can do anything." I watched their celebration with the quiet interest of an anthropologist, observing a foreign culture. Their joy was real, their excitement genuine. They truly believed their lives had just transformed from struggle to paradise. "Can you imagine?" Teresa turned to include me in their celebration, her face flushed with euphoria. "Dad, can you even imagine? $30 million. I nodded slowly. "It's quite a sum." Quite a sum? Neil laughed, a sound approaching hysteria. It's life-changing money. It's never worry about anything again money. They danced around the coffee table like children, making plans and promises to each other. Teresa talked about the house in Florida she'd always dreamed of. Neil mentioned the boat he'd wanted since high school. Neither of them looked closely at the other two tickets still lying on the coffee table. Neither of them wondered why I seemed so calm in the face of their incredible fortune. They were too busy celebrating to notice that the man who'd made it all possible was watching them with the patience of someone who knew the real show hadn't started yet. Their celebration reached fever pitch. Teresa grabbed Neil's hands and spun him around the coffee table again, both of them laughing like children who discovered buried treasure. The winning ticket fluttered in her grip like a white flag of victory. We're rich! We're actually rich! Neil lifted her off her feet, spinning her until she shrieked with delight. $30 million! Can you believe it? I remained in my chair, watching their dance of triumph. They moved around me like I was furniture, already forgotten in their euphoria. The television continued its post-lottery programming, but neither of them paid attention anymore. They had what they needed. We can finally get that house in Florida, Teresa gasped when Neil set her down. The one with the pool and the ocean view. Remember? We looked at it online last year. And the boat, Neil added, his eyes bright with avarice. That 30-foot cabin cruiser. We'll live like kings. Teresa clutched the ticket to her chest like a love letter. No more worrying about money. No more arguing about bills. No more. Her gaze fell on me, and something shifted in her expression. The wild joy remained, but underneath it, I saw calculation. Cold, practical assessment of what this windfall meant for their current arrangement. No more depending on anyone, she finished quietly. Neil followed her stare. For a moment, the living room fell silent except for the television's drone. Then his face broke into a cruel smile. That's right. He straightened his shoulders, suddenly standing taller. We don't need your pathetic pennies anymore, old man. The words hit like physical blows. Pathetic pennies. 3 years of my pension, 3 years of grocery contributions, 3 years of helping them survive, reduced to pathetic pennies by a man who hadn't worked in 2 years. Those pennies fed you, I said quietly. Teresa's eyes flashed. Fed us? Your $1,200 barely covered utilities. We've been carrying you for 3 years, Dad. 3 years of extra food, extra heating costs, extra everything because you couldn't take care of yourself. I sold my house for you. You sold your house because you couldn't maintain it, Neil snapped, because you needed us to take care of you. Well, guess what? We don't need to take care of anyone anymore. Teresa waved the ticket like a scepter. We're millionaires now. We can afford to live our own lives without supporting dead weight. Dead weight. After 37 years at the Ford plant, after raising her alone when Margaret died, after giving them the majority of my life savings, I had become dead weight. Pack your bags, Neil continued, his voice gaining confidence with each word. It's time you found somewhere else to live. Neil! Teresa's protest was weak, barely audible. No, Teresa. He heard what we said earlier. We can't afford to keep him here on his pension. Well, now we can afford not to keep him here. Neil crossed his arms, looking pleased with his logic. $30 million means we get to choose who lives in our house. Our house. The house they'd bought with my $150,000 had become their house the moment they thought they'd won the lottery. You want me to leave tonight? I asked. Tonight, tomorrow morning, whatever. Neil shrugged. Point is, you need to go. We've got a new life to plan, and frankly, it doesn't include babysitting elderly relatives. Teresa clutched her ticket tighter. Dad, you have to understand. This changes everything. We can afford to help you find a nice assisted living place, somewhere with people your own age. Assisted living, the final insult wrapped in false kindness. They wanted to warehouse me with other discarded family members, other inconvenient elderly relatives whose children had found better uses for their money. I understand perfectly, I said, rising from my chair. The simple actions seemed to surprise them. Maybe they'd expected tears, begging, promises to be less of a burden. Instead, I stood with the same dignity I'd carried for 68 years, the same quiet strength that had supported them through every crisis they'd faced. You understand? Teresa blinked, momentarily uncertain. I understand that $30 million has shown me exactly who you really are. Neil's face reddened. Don't try to guilt trip us, old man. We don't owe you anything. No, I agreed. You don't. I walked toward the stairs, each step measured and deliberate. Behind me, I heard Teresa whisper something to Neil, but I couldn't make out the words. It didn't matter. Everything I needed to know had already been said. At the bottom of the staircase, I paused and looked back. They stood together in their living room, surrounded by scattered bills and lottery dreams, holding their ticket like a weapon they'd just used to cut me out of their lives. They had no idea that the weapon belonged to me. The stairs creaked under my weight, each step carrying me away from their celebration and toward the small room that had sheltered me for 3 years. Behind me, their voices rose again in excitement, planning purchases and vacations they'd never take. My bedroom waited in darkness. I flicked on the overhead light, and the space revealed itself in all its modest simplicity. A single bed with the quilt Margaret had made 20 years ago. A dresser that had once stood in our master bedroom on Elm Street. A small television that barely received local stations. This room had housed a man worth $30 million, and they'd treated him like charity case. I pulled my old suitcase from the closet, the same leather case I'd carried on my honeymoon, with Margaret 43 years ago. The zipper still worked, though the corners showed wear from decades of modest travel. Bus trips to visit relatives, weekend getaways to Lake Geneva when money allowed. Packing took on a rhythm of its own. Shirts folded carefully, pants arranged to minimize wrinkles. 3 days' worth of underwear and socks. My diabetes medication, blood pressure pills, the little plastic organizer that helped me remember which pills to take when. The photograph of Margaret went into the suitcase first, wrapped in a spare undershirt for protection. 41 years of marriage reduced to a 4x6 frame, but it contained more love than this entire house had shown me in 3 years. My important documents filled a manila envelope, Social Security card, Medicare information, bank statements showing my modest balance, $28,000. Not enough to live comfortably in retirement, but enough for what I needed to do next. From downstairs came the sound of cabinet doors slamming, followed by Teresa's voice. Where did we put that bottle of champagne from last Christmas? They were celebrating. Of course they were celebrating. They thought they'd won their freedom, along with their fortune. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding my wallet. Inside, tucked between my driver's license and Medicare card, 2 lottery tickets waited patiently. Same numbers as the one they clutched downstairs. Same drawing date. Same $30 million jackpot. But different names. 42 years I'd worked in that factory, breathing metal dust and machine oil, watching younger men get promoted while I stayed steady and reliable on the floor. 42 years of overtime when we needed money for Teresa's school clothes, for Margaret's medical bills, for the 1,000 small expenses that come with raising a family properly. I'd never missed a day unless I was genuinely sick. Never called in because I wanted to go fishing or had a hangover or simply didn't feel like working. When the foreman needed someone for Saturday overtime, Orrin Peters raised his hand. When they needed someone to train new workers, Orrin Peters stayed late without extra pay. Steady, reliable, forgettable. The house on Elm Street had been my reward for all those years. Paid off early through careful budgeting and sacrifice, it had represented security for Margaret and me. When she died, it had been my sanctuary, filled with memories and familiar corners where her presence still lingered. I'd given it up for family, for blood, for the promise that I'd always have a home with people who loved me. Downstairs, Neil's voice boomed. First thing tomorrow, we call a travel agent. I want to see Paris, Rome, all those places we never thought we'd afford. Places they'd visit with my money while I sat in some sterile, assisted living facility, paying for cable television and cafeteria meals, with what remained of my Social Security. I closed the suitcase and zipped it shut. The sound was final, decisive. The life of grateful dependent Orrin Peters was ending. What came next would be entirely different. A second, smaller bag held my toiletries and a change of clothes. Everything else, the furniture I'd bought, the lamp that had been Margaret's favorite, the books I'd accumulated over 3 years of empty evenings, could stay. Material things meant nothing now. Justice meant everything. The stairs creaked again as I descended, carrying my two small bags. The celebration in the living room had grown louder, more raucous. Someone had found that champagne. I reached the front hallway and set my bags by the door. The same door I'd walked through 3 years ago, carrying hope and gratitude for my daughter's kindness. Tonight, I'd walk through it, carrying something else entirely. The truth. Teresa stood in the hallway when I reached the bottom of the stairs, champagne glass in one hand, the lottery ticket in the other. She'd been waiting for me, probably to ensure I actually left. Her face was flushed with excitement and alcohol, her smile sharp with victory. "Huh. Well, Dad," she said, waving the ticket like a conductor's baton, "I guess this is goodbye. Don't look so sad. This is good for all of us. You'll be much happier somewhere more appropriate for your age." She held the ticket higher, admiring it against the hallway light. Our golden ticket to freedom, $30 million of pure, beautiful freedom. I set my bags down carefully and studied her face. In all the excitement, all the celebration and cruel dismissal, she hadn't actually looked at what she was holding. She'd checked the numbers against the television, celebrated the match, but never examined the ticket itself. "Daughter," I said quietly, "did you even read whose name is written on that lottery ticket?" Her smile faltered slightly. "What do you mean?" "It's our ticket. We bought it with our money. You bought it with $5. But whose name did you tell the machine to print?" Something flickered in her eyes, confusion, then the first hint of unease. She lowered the ticket and looked at it closely for the first time since the drawing. Her face went completely white. "Orrin Peters," she read aloud, her voice barely a whisper. This says Orrin Peters." "That's right." She stared at the ticket, then at me, then back at the ticket. "This can't be right. There must be some mistake." "No mistake. That ticket belongs to me." "But I gave you $5. You bought this for us." "You gave me $5 to buy a ticket. I bought 3 tickets. 1 for you, with your money, in your name. 2 for me, with my money, in my name." I held out my hand. "That ticket you're holding, that belongs to me." Neil appeared in the hallway, drawn by the change in Teresa's voice. "What's going on? Why do you look like someone died?" Teresa held up the ticket with trembling fingers. "Neil, look at this. Look at the name." He squinted at the small print, his champagne-addled brain struggling to process what he was seeing. "Orrin Peters. So what? The old man bought it for us." "No," I said calmly. "I bought it for me, with my money, in my name, which makes it legally mine." The hallway fell silent except for the sound of their television in the background, still playing to an empty living room. I watched understanding dawn on their faces like a sunrise in reverse, darkness spreading where light had been. "You can't," Teresa's voice cracked. "This is ours. We won this. You've been celebrating a ticket that was never yours." Neil stepped forward, his face reddening. "You bought that ticket with money we gave you." "I bought 3 tickets. Yours is probably still on the coffee table where I left it, with your name on it. And you're losing numbers." "This is some kind of trick," Teresa whispered, but her voice carried no conviction. I reached out gently and took the ticket from her suddenly limp fingers. She didn't resist. The paper felt warm from her grip, slightly damp from her champagne-soaked celebration. $30 million, I said, looking at the numbers that matched perfectly with Tuesday night's drawing. "That's quite a sum, as you said. Enough to buy a nice house somewhere warm, enough to travel. Enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life." "Dad, wait!" Teresa's voice was pleading now, desperate. "We can work this out. We're family. We can share it." "Share it?" I folded the ticket carefully and placed it in my wallet, next to the 2 identical tickets that would serve as backup copies. "The way we've shared this house, the way we've shared expenses, the way you just shared your feelings about supporting dead weight." Neil's face had gone from red to purple. "You planned this. You set us up. I bought lottery tickets with my own money, just like millions of other people do every week. The fact that I won is just—" I smiled, feeling genuine happiness for the first time in 3 years. "Lucky!" Neil's footsteps thundered down the stairs like an avalanche. He appeared in the hallway, his face purple with rage, champagne breath preceding him like a warning. "What the hell is going on?" He looked between Teresa's shocked face and my calm demeanor. Why does she look like someone died? Teresa held up her trembling hand, pointing at the ticket in my possession. Neil, the ticket. It has his name on it. Not ours. His. For a moment, Neil's alcohol-fogged brain struggled to process the information. Then his eyes focused on the lottery ticket in my hands with laser intensity. Give that back right now. He stepped toward me, his bulk filling the narrow hallway. That ticket belongs to us. We've been planning our whole future around it. The ticket belongs to whoever's name appears on it, I said calmly. Illinois law is quite clear about that. I don't care what the law says. Neil's voice climbed toward hysteria. You bought that with our money, in our house, for our family. I bought 3 tickets. Yours is still on the coffee table with your losing numbers. Neil's hands clenched into fists. Give back that ticket, old man, or you'll regret it. I took a half step backward, maintaining eye contact. One more step toward me, and I'm calling police for assault and attempted theft. The words stopped him like a physical barrier. His fists remained clenched, but his feet stayed planted. Even through his rage, he understood the implications. You can't do this to us, Teresa whispered, tears starting to flow. We're family. We've taken care of you for 3 years. Taken care of me? I tucked the ticket securely into my wallet. You just finished telling me I was dead weight you couldn't wait to get rid of. We didn't mean it, she pleaded. We were just excited about the money. We weren't thinking clearly. No, daughter. For the first time in 3 years, you were thinking very clearly. You showed me exactly what I mean to you when you thought you had the power to discard me. Neil stepped sideways, trying to block my path to the door. You're not leaving with that ticket. We'll call the police ourselves. We'll tell them you stole it. Please do. I reached for my suitcase handle. I'd be happy to show them my receipt from the 7-Eleven, along with the security footage of me purchasing 3 tickets with my own money. I'd also enjoy explaining how you tried to physically intimidate a senior citizen into surrendering his legal property. The color drained from Neil's face. Even drunk, he could follow that logic to its inevitable conclusion. Dad, please, Teresa's voice broke completely. We can work this out. We can share the money. You can live here as long as you want. We'll never mention money again. Share? I lifted my second suitcase. The way we shared this house? The way we shared expenses? The way you shared your honest feelings about supporting your aging father? We made a mistake, Neil said, his aggression crumbling into desperation. People say things they don't mean when they're excited. No, Neil. People say what they really think when they feel safe enough to say it. Tonight, you both felt safe enough to show me your true selves. I moved toward the door, and this time Neil stepped aside. His fight had collapsed into hollow defeat. Where will you go? Teresa asked quietly. Somewhere I'm wanted. I opened the front door, letting November air rush in around us. Somewhere I'm valued for more than my monthly pension check. You're making a huge mistake, Neil said, but his voice carried no conviction. No, I made my mistake 3 years ago when I believed family meant something more than financial convenience. I stepped onto the porch, my suitcases in hand. Tonight, I'm correcting that mistake. The porch light cast long shadows across the front yard. Behind me, I heard Teresa sobbing and Neil muttering curses under his breath. Ahead of me lay the cold November night and whatever future $30 million could buy. I walked down the driveway without looking back. Their voices faded behind me, swallowed by the darkness that had always felt more welcoming than their false warmth. For the first time in 3 years, I was free. The Motel 6 on Randall Road became my sanctuary that first night. The room smelled of industrial cleaning products and worn carpet, but it offered something Teresa's house never had, honest hospitality paid for with honest money. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding the winning ticket under the harsh fluorescent light. 7, 23, 31, 42, 58, Powerball 12, numbers that would transform my remaining years from burden to blessing. Morning brought practical decisions. The Illinois lottery office in Des Plaines opened at 9. By 8:30, I was dressed in my best shirt and jacket, tickets secured in my wallet alongside backup documentation. The lottery building hummed with quiet efficiency. Security guards, government employees, people who processed dreams for a living. My caseworker, Patricia, treated me with professional courtesy that felt revolutionary after 3 years of familial condescension. Congratulations, Mr. Peters. She examined my ticket under special lighting, checking watermarks and security features. Everything appears authentic. We'll need to verify your identity and discuss payment options. How long does the process take? 2 to 3 weeks for full processing. You'll have options. Lump sum after taxes, roughly 18 million, or annual payments over 30 years. $18 million. More money than 3 generations of Peter's men had earned combined. Lump sum, I said without hesitation. Smart choice for someone your age. We'll also discuss anonymity options. Illinois allows winners to remain private if they prefer. Private? Yes, I preferred that very much. My phone buzzed constantly those first days. Teresa's number appeared dozens of times, followed by Neil's. I let every call go to voicemail, eventually blocking both numbers entirely. The messages grew increasingly desperate. Teresa's apologies mixed with guilt, manipulation. Neil's threats transformed into pleading. By the second week, they'd recruited neighbors to call on their behalf, people who had no idea what had really happened that Tuesday night. I changed my number. The motel became my temporary kingdom. Room 127, with its 2 double beds and cable television, cost $69 per night. For the first time in years, I could afford anything I wanted, but I chose simplicity. Fast food meals, basic cable, long walks around Elgin while I planned my future. December arrived with the first real snow. Through my window, I watched other travelers come and go. Salespeople, construction workers, families in transition, people living temporary lives while seeking permanent solutions, like me. The lottery office called on December 10th. Mr. Peters, your funds are ready for transfer. If you could come in tomorrow to finalize paperwork. Of course. That night, I researched houses online. Lake Forest caught my attention immediately. Quiet neighborhoods near Lake Michigan, upscale but not ostentatious. Places where a retired lottery winner could live comfortably without attracting unwanted attention. Patricia handed me the final check on Thursday, December 12th. $18,200,000 after taxes. Enough to buy security, comfort, and most importantly, independence. Any plans for the money? She asked politely. Living well, I replied. Finally, living well. The check went into my new bank account that afternoon. The banker, Mr. Morrison, treated me with the deference reserved for significant depositors. No questions about my previous circumstances, no judgments about my modest appearance. Just professional service for a valued customer. Real estate appointments filled the following week. Lake Forest offered elegant options within my budget. Not mansions, but substantial homes with character and privacy. Places where Orrin Peters could be whoever he chose to be. I found my house on December 18th, a villa-style home with lake views, mature landscaping, and enough space for a man to think clearly. The seller accepted my cash offer immediately. Closing was scheduled for January 3rd. New Year's Eve found me in the same motel room, watching celebrations on television while snow fell outside. Other people celebrated another year survived. I celebrated the beginning of my real life. At 68 years old, I was finally ready to live for myself. January sunshine streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my new living room, casting warm light across hardwood floors that belonged entirely to me. The moving truck had departed 2 hours ago, leaving behind furniture chosen for comfort rather than economy, arranged in rooms spacious enough for a man to breathe freely. Lake Forest suited me perfectly. My neighbors nodded politely during morning walks, respecting the privacy that wealth could purchase. No one here knew about pension checks or family obligations or lottery tickets that had changed everything. Here I was simply Mr. Peters, the quiet gentleman in the villa with the lake view. The kitchen gleamed with appliances I'd only seen in showrooms. This morning I'd prepared fresh coffee in a machine that cost more than a month of my previous grocery budget. The irony wasn't lost on me. I finally had money to eat well, and my appetite had returned for the first time in years. My phone sat silent on the granite countertop. 3 months since I'd changed my number, and the blessed quiet continued. No desperate voicemails, no guilt-laden text messages, no family emergencies that required my immediate financial intervention. Peace had a sound, and it was silence. Mrs. Henderson from next door had stopped by yesterday with homemade cookies, welcoming me to the neighborhood with genuine warmth. Her husband owned the medical practice downtown she'd mentioned, and they'd lived here 23 years. Good people, she'd said, referring to our shared neighbors. People who valued privacy and respected boundaries. Respect. What a concept. The master bedroom overlooked Lake Michigan, where winter ice stretched toward the horizon like a promise of endless possibility. Margaret's photograph sat on the nightstand, and for the first time since her death, I could look at her picture without feeling guilty about my circumstances. She would have loved this house, this view, this freedom to choose how we spent our days. Finally living for myself, I said aloud, testing the words in the empty room. They sounded true. My financial advisor had outlined investment strategies that would preserve wealth for decades. Conservative growth, diversified portfolio, enough income to maintain this lifestyle indefinitely. At 68, I had time to enjoy what I'd earned through 47 years of labor and 3 years of humiliation. Travel brochures covered the dining room table. Europe in spring, maybe Australia in their fall. Places Margaret and I had dreamed about during those Ford plant years, when over time pay meant choosing between vacation savings and Teresa's school expenses. Now I could go anywhere, do anything, be anyone. The doorbell rang, interrupting my planning. Through the security monitor, I saw a delivery truck and a uniformed driver holding a large package. Mr. Peters, furniture delivery from Restoration Hardware. The dining room chairs I'd ordered last week. Handcrafted pieces that would last decades, unlike the second-hand furniture that had filled my previous life. Just set them in the foyer, I said, signing for the delivery. I'll arrange them later. The driver smiled professionally. Beautiful house, sir. You picked a great neighborhood. Yes, I agreed. I did. After he left, I walked through my new home again, noting details that still amazed me. Crown molding, hardwood floors, windows that opened to let in lake breezes, rooms large enough for entertaining, though I had no intention of hosting anyone from my previous life. This house represented more than wealth. It represented choice. The choice to live with dignity, to spend money without justification, to plan a future without considering anyone else's needs or opinions. Justice had taken an unexpected form. Not revenge exactly, but natural consequences. Their greed had cost them everything they'd thought they'd gained. My dignity had earned me everything they'd thought was theirs. The afternoon light shifted across my living room, painting geometric patterns on walls that would never echo with complaints about my pension or criticism of my contributions. These walls would know only peace. I settled into my new leather chair, opened the European travel guide, and began planning my spring in Tuscany. At 68, I was finally beginning to live. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.